afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel, today 25th of June 2025. I declare the meeting open at 2 p.m. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledges the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call the Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today. My name is Stephen Lehman and I am the chair of today's panel. Also sitting on the panel today are expert members Stephen Leithley, to my left, Graham Brown to my right, and community member Tony Neal to my far left. This meeting is being live streamed via Council's website and the recording will be made available on the website after the meeting. At this point, could I ask everyone please to turn off their mobile phones or turn them to silent, which I think I should do right now. There are no apologies and we have a full complement on the panel today. There are no declarations of interest declared. Each panel member, could you please confirm and indicate with a hand signal that you do not have any declaration of interest? No declaration of interest. The Council website contains a copy of the operational guidelines for the panel meetings, but I will summarise the most important points. The panel is charged with 4 items. Items 5.1, planning proposal, and DA 6.1 and 6.2 on the agenda today. There are 5 registered speakers. After hearing from the speakers, we will deliberate and return to the public meeting to announce our determinations, and that announcement will be live streamed. Thereafter, the minutes of the meeting will be placed on the Council website within 2 business days. The first item is item 6.1, and I have John Monk to speak against the proposal. Is John Monk present, and would you come forward please, sir? Take a chair and just check that your microphone is on, that the orange light on the right-hand side is on. Can I ask you please to just formally introduce yourself and your interest in the matter, and if you're a neighbour, could you indicate where you are in relation to the site?
Yeah, okay. My name's John Monk. I'm an interested party in the respect that we're neighbours of the proposed property. Yep. We are back onto the property. Right. So our side fence runs along the back of that property. Right.
So what did you have to say, Mr. Monk?
Firstly, I just want to thank you for the chance for our voice to be heard. That's my wife and myself. My wife and I unequivocally oppose this childcare standard development for reasons we outlined in our submission during the public comment phase of the DA. We bought in Bowral Street, Bowral, as it gave us the quality of life and future we were looking for in retirement. This didn't include living next to an active business. You will have noticed, and I believe you did do a site visit, you will have noticed during the site visit the slope of the block, which means that the proposed building ground floor level will be 1 to 1.5 metres above the existing ground level at the southwest corner of the proposed building, meaning that our privacy, as outlined in the objection submission, will be greatly diminished from both levels of the build. Any attempt to rectify this via landscaping above 3 to 3.5 metres at the back of the proposed property will cause us hardship in the form of reduction of passive heating, solar collection and additional mild growth in our northeastern areas, along with additional cost to gardening, which we have under the government Keeping People at Home schemes. We note that the council assessors have recommended refusal of the proposal, and we strongly urge this planning meeting to agree with council recommendation in maintaining the existing character of the area as a low-density residential development. That's basically all of.
Thank you, that's fine.
All I've got there. If you do have anything that you want to clarify with me, I'm quite happy to do that.
Please hold your seat for the minute, and I'll ask the panel if they have any questions for you. Panel, are there any questions or comments for this speaker? No, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
I did have another speaker who I'm told now is unable to attend, George Jawabi. So we need to move on to a speaker on behalf of the applicant owner, Michael Vine, who I believe is joining us by remote Zoom. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you. So could you respond, please, to the speaker and address the panel on any other matters you think need to be ventilated in relation to, in the light of the recommendation for refusal?
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'd just like to essentially urge the panel. The report before them is for refusal of the development application. And I'd sort of urge caution to be taken in blindly accepting the recommendations of that report, because there's a number of factors that I think are either inconsistent or subject to challenge as a result of the conclusions that's been come to with the report. Firstly, I just want to address the commentary of the objector, and I understand that there is, I understand his concerns and being a neighbouring property, and there being concerns relating to there being a childcare centre on the site. This is a permitted use in the low density zone. The childcare centre is built to a height, setbacks, and capacity that could be exactly the same in terms of the density and scale of a building as a dwelling house would be. In fact, it's actually set in further from the boundaries than what a compliant dwelling house could be built at the site. Yes, a childcare centre does attract various activities in terms of noise and parking, etc. But these things are part of a community and part of the need to accommodate children in daycare, and they need to go somewhere. This is a property that's been identified, and I know that there's a number of childcare centres recently that have been before the panel, and they do tend to be quite highly controversial. But the fact of the matter is they need to go somewhere, and this site fits all the criteria. It's permitted, and there's no compelling site situations that would suggest that it's not appropriate. It just comes down to then whether the operation in its intensity and the scale of the building in terms of its height in relationship to neighbouring properties is in fact an unacceptable outcome. And it's important for the panel to understand that the application has gone to a number of internal and external technical professionals, all of which are fully supportive, and it's gone to sewer and water, public assets, tree officer, environmental health, as well as Water New South Wales and Endeavour Energy, all of which have had supportive comments, and that's articulated in the report. We note that there is an objection from the traffic engineer in relation to the parking shortfall, but parking is a DCP requirement, and a parking solution has been proposed tailored to the specifics of this property and supported in a very detailed traffic and parking assessment as accompanied the application. The project team went through quite an iterative design process in terms of lodging an initial application and then making a number of amendments. Probably the most significant amendments was reducing the children numbers from 72 to 56 to drop it down to be more plausible with the parking that could be provided at the property frontage. Just moving to the reasons for refusal, there's nothing to my mind that provides any substantive planning grounds to support or provide a defendable position on the refusal reasons to the application. There's concerns relating to the inconsistency of the character of the height of the building being 2 stories when it could reasonably be developed as a 2-story dwelling house in the exact same location. The architect has gone to some degree to try to soften the frontage with deep soil planting and an interface to the landscape frontage to the street as required by the DCP. It being incompatible with the character of the area is a bit strange to me. How can a building be compliant with height and setback requirements and the spatial qualities of a dwelling and then be incompatible with the character of the area? The architect has gone to some length to, as I said, screen the building and try to tone it down from like a typically louder looking childcare centre to something that sits a bit more comfortably in the context. Yes, it's not going to look like a single level cottage, but it has a visual quality that's definitely not discordant with a prevailing, otherwise prevailing character. I guess from there, I mean, there's a lot of content in the report and there's a lot of conclusions. And it's going to be difficult me going through it all, so I don't want you to go through it all.
I think there might be some questions from the panel, and if not, there's a question or two from me to the consultant who prepared the assessment. So, panel, are there any questions of this consultant or comments?
I've just got a question for Mr. Vine. You mentioned inconsistencies in the report. Can you identify what those inconsistencies are?
Oh well, the report says that there is a failure to comply with the childcare regulations in terms of the internal external areas, and we've gone to significant detail to show that is the case. The report also says that there was no updated plan and management that doesn't reflect the proposed numbers of children. I mean, it's very clear we provided an updated set of documentation that clarified the number of children. The plan of management was updated accordingly, and I just don't know where those findings or how someone's come to that conclusion. And that's just a couple of them, but it's it was evident to me that there was a few conclusions in the report that didn't quite stack up with our assessment and our findings, and they're just two main ones.
What about was there an amended acoustic report for the amended plan?
There was no amended acoustic report. The acoustic report was supportive of the application as it originally went in. And the amendments, to my understanding, the concerns raised in Council's request for information related more to applying the recommendations of the report. So applying acoustic screens where they were shown and other annotations that were consistent with the recommendations of the acoustic report. So there was no updated acoustic report, but that actually took into account a higher intensity of children. So our response was that those matters were clarified on the submission documents, and the children numbers were reduced. So there's no logical reason why the acoustic report would therefore need to be updated, to my mind.
Thank you.
What about? Can I just?
Yeah, sure.
What about the amended architectural design? That didn't warrant the acoustic report being revised?
Well, it begs the question: why would an acoustic report need to be revised? And it would validly need to be revised if there was changes that was significant enough to go over and above the initial assessment, or an increase of intensity of the children numbers, or there was mitigation measures originally proposed and endorsed that were reduced, none of which happened. Quite the opposite. The numbers were reduced, and the mitigation measures were clearly shown on the drawings in terms of acoustic fencing, fencing at the upper levels, and the other measures that were requested in the request for information. They were provided, and to my understanding, I don't feel as though the acoustic report therefore needs to necessarily be updated if that was all that was asked for us or from us.
Thank you. We have a representative of the consultant planning firm that undertook the assessment with us there's a few things arising in my mind from what you've said. There were, I'll take them in the order that they came to me. You said that the development is the same scale as a dwelling house would be on that site. Sorry, Mr. Vine said that. And so the planning consultant, could you please respond to that? Secondly, I'll set it all out. Parking, there was adequate justification made for a shortfall in parking. And thirdly, that an updated acoustic report and plan of management were not required in Mr. Vine's submission. Can you address those, please?
Happy to, panel chair. I guess in terms of your comment, Mr. Vine, on this dwelling house could be of a bigger scale. That's not what's proposed. So what we're looking at is a childcare centre that doesn't comply with the setbacks. There are specific setbacks for childcare centres in residential zones that require a 4 metre setback. Your development has a 1.5 metre setback. And again, each DA is assessed on its merits based on its impacts, and from a bulk and scale impact here, as well as character, we don't think the proposed development is suitable. And there are a number of non-compliances as a result of that with the planning, the childcare planning guidelines. In terms of car parking, there is a shortfall, which I think you've acknowledged. Council's traffic engineers, as well as us as planners, have reviewed that justification. And again, from our perspective, it's not acceptable. There's a number of safety implications of, I guess, parents using this site. I think you propose 14 car spaces in total. 8 of those are designated for staff, which leaves very few for the parents' drop-off and pick-up arrangements. Again, the deficit of 6 car spaces isn't acceptable in a site like this, given there is no opportunity also to rely on on-street car parking, given the configuration of the street. In terms of the acoustic report and plan of management, the documentation provided to us doesn't include an amended plan of management, so that doesn't appear on the planning portal. So I probably question whether or not that was lodged. In terms of the acoustic report, there are a number of changes to the architectural plans, and not simply just a reduction in numbers, which is the case, but I guess as a result of that reduction in numbers, the acoustic impacts have been reviewed. And as an example, the current acoustic report we have talks about a 2 metre high fence along all boundaries and also forward to the building line. So if that number is reduced, I would assume the acoustic attenuation fences could be reduced. So there is benefit, obviously, in having that acoustic report amended to reflect that. But there are also changes to car parking configuration in terms of the numbers of spaces that were inside and outside that parking area, which would really need to be considered in light of the revised plans. And it's commonplace in all applications where amended plans are provided, particularly where noise is always going to be an issue, that you would have an amended acoustic report.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yes, do you have something briefly?
So if I may, I just in respect to your question that you asked before, you asked a very simple question, and the question was: is the scale of the building proposed consistent with what the scale of a house could be on the property? And I don't believe that was directly answered, and I'd just like the opportunity to answer that quickly, if I may.
I think there was a reference to the side setbacks, which went to that.
Yeah,
But anyway,
what was said is there's the point I was making is that there's the requirements in the DCP that says that a building needs to be sympathetic to a residential character.
Yes.
And then there's also a requirement within the DCP to say a childcare centre requires 4 metre setbacks from side boundaries. What I was saying is that this building and the setbacks that it's adopted to the boundaries, to the side boundaries, is the same as, if not more conservative than what could be provided by a compliant dwelling house at the property. And so the incidental impacts of the scale of that building is no different to, or if not less than, what could be applied with a compliant dwelling house. And that was simply the point I was trying to make.
Okay, I think I understand your point. We don't need to discuss that any further, I don't believe. So if there's no more further questions from the panel, I'll thank you, Mr. Vine.
Thank you.
We'll retire to deliberate on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6.2 at Robertson. Hoddle Street, numbers 71 to 77. This is for a mixed-use development comprising food and drink premises and woodworking information and education facility. So, in my list, I do not have a speaker against the proposal. Speaking on behalf of the applicant owner, I have Alexandra Gilmore, owner. Is Alexandra Gilmore present? The owner's present. Okay, and your name, sir? Beg your pardon? Hey, come forward and introduce yourself, sorry. Henry?
Yes, my name's Henry Parry Oakton. I'm the owner of the property.
Okay, thank you. You're the owner of the property?
Yes.
Okay, I think that describes your interest pretty clearly.
Thanks.
Can you tell us what you want to say?
Well, I'd like to thank the panel for their time, and respectfully, I'd rather not be on the agenda. Both my wife, Sarah, and I are proud residents of this LGA, and we do not wish to contest the recommendation for refusal. Instead, we hope sharing our experience can bring about some needed change. I want Robertson and the Southern Highlands to thrive. That's why we proposed The Guild, a world-class centre combining a microbrewery, woodworking, and paddock-to-plate restaurant. It was designed to activate the main street and align with the council's own revitalisation goals. In 2022, we met with the council's strategic team, including Michael Park. They were notably excited by the concept and initial designs. We refined those designs to align with the Robertson Village Plan and submitted our DA in November of 23. What followed was a cycle of delays, shifting requirements, and months of silence, followed by drip-fed requests for more information. We kept responding immediately, hiring consultants and revising plans, believing we were working through the process in good faith. By August 2024, after months of no progress, I requested a meeting to identify any remaining issues and hopefully prevent any last-minute surprises. I was ignored. Then, on the 19th of June of 2025, 1,096 days since first engaging with Council, we received the committee report. Buried in it, breweries are a non-permissible use. After 3 years of engagement, no one identified the basic constraint of our proposal. Not one planner, not one staff member with strategic in their title flagged that our central idea of brewery was never going to be permissible. This is not an oversight. It is not just a failure of process, it is negligence. Sarah and I will move on, but we are in a privileged position. My anger and emotions are for the people and the families who lose their savings and potentially their businesses in this type of process. It is cruel and something needs to change. Robertson and Wingecarribee has now lost a shovel-ready, community-driven project. Local tradespeople have lost jobs, and telling builders and interested businesses was more upsetting to me than the hundreds of thousands of dollars we have spent. We will be selling both of these properties, both the Guild and the adjacent bank. The millions we hope to invest in the Shire will be directed toward a forward-thinking and innovative council, one who works towards the values, visions and plans they plaster on websites, buildings and presentations. We care deeply about this place. We live here, our friends are here, our kids go to school here, and collectively, we all deserve better. No one should have to endure 3 years of effort, money, time and passion only to discover their dream was in fact never possible. And this was our dream. It wasn't commercially driven, and we will build this. Sadly, it just won't be here. And from memory, the underbidder for 71 Hoddle Street was a heavy vehicle depot. And if that's what ends up on the site, the community can direct their appreciation to Wingecarribee Council's planning process. Please help fix this process for the sake of the community you are here to serve.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the panel of this speaker?
Yes. Yes, I might have a few questions, if I may. Firstly, I would just caution against assuming that the panel's just going to go along with a recommendation. We will sit here and consider the application on its merits and determine it thereby, but give you an opportunity to make representations on some matters. In relation to the microbrewery, have you got a tenant, or is there someone that's going to be specifically operating that, or how are you proposing to operate that element of this development?
Yes, there was a tenant ready to operate that.
Right. Was information provided with the application, specific information, because it seemed to be missing from the information detailed in the report about how that brewery would operate, like the quantities of product that would be made, how it would like a plan of management, how it would all specifically operate, because it all gets to, as the report says, if it's defined as an artisan food and drink premises, it then becomes prohibited. But an application can be put together and plans of management so that that element itself can become ancillary to it, and it could fit under a food and drink premises more broadly. So I believe that element of detail is certainly missing in the report in terms of how that might operate, so that that element might be permissible.
Yeah, that was requested about 4 weeks ago after almost 3 years of this process, and fundamentally broke the camel that broke the straw's back, and my loss of confidence in this council. It was just a completely drip-fed and process that just seems so incompetent to have 3 years.
Look, I think we've heard enough about the process. Let's focus on the issues.
Look,
Don't think that the decision is predetermined. This panel will make the decision.
It's okay. I'm not recommending that you
So
go against the refusal. I'm selling the properties and moving
fine,
elsewhere. So
okay. But I just wanted to make that point to you.
Yeah, no, I understand.
We will decide. The report hasn't decided. It's made a recommendation.
Yeah, understood.
So, okay. Any other questions for this? Yeah, I think I don't need to go any further. Thanks. Dan Simpkins.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So yes, Dan Simpkins.
Town planner, is that right?
Sorry?
You're a town planner, is that correct?
Town planner. I know a little bit of one of the panel members from a previous role with the Department of Planning.
It's fine.
Was engaged by the applicant 8 days ago to provide strategic planning advice and advice to the panel. And I guess what those 8 days fresh look revealed was that the blockage wasn't compliance. It was probably a shortage of explored options. I would say council's assessment is technically sound from a planning perspective. The rules were applied exactly as written, but a purely compliance lens can stop us short of the bigger goal, turning the Robertson Place plan catalyst site, which is what this is, into a reality. A strategy that's not materialised is a fairy tale, and only in movies do fairy tales come real. The options that could have been tabled earlier to resolve some of these matters were the south side servicing lane. The use of the unmade road reserve is flagged in the place plan to solve the issues of delivery and servicing access. A voluntary planning agreement to share the costs of off-site car parking and a new service road, giving both council and the town centre a direct dividend. An integrated planning proposal and DA package, lodging a single combined submission early could have made the microbrewery an additional permitted use if there was concern around it being a primary use, and that could have all been done within the 220-day department rezoning benchmark. Why does shared problem-solving matter? Well, it should never really be the sole responsibility of the applicant to raise and solve issues. The Robertson Place plan is council policy. When an application advances its aims, council has a shared interest in finding pathways to solutions, not just pointing to technical standards, which are one acceptable solution, but not the only solution. The real test is when both parties work collaboratively to ensure strategic objectives are met. The key ask that I have of this panel is please acknowledge in your report the proposal's strategic merit and clear alignment with the Robertson Place plan. recognise that the reasons for refusal are not insurmountable and could have been mitigated or managed in existing policy and planning frameworks, and record that the declining of the application as presented to you represents a missed opportunity for Robertson. Compliance is necessary, but collaboration turns plans into places. Today, I think, is a missed opportunity that leaves this Catalyst site as a bedtime story. I hope that there may be another visionary who can help the Robertson Place plan get the ending, real-world ending it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. I hear what you say. I agree that a collaborative process might have produced a different outcome. And I think there are other pathways, but I won't preempt the panel's decision. We'll be making a determination this afternoon on the matter, taking into account what's been said and what's, you know, we have in mind the greater interests of Robertson as well as the planning matters. I think it's fair to say. So I don't think there are any other speakers. I don't have any on the list. Is there anybody in the room who wishes to speak before I close the meeting? No? Thank you. Then that concludes the public part of the meeting. At 2:32 p.m, we will retire to deliberate and return to announce our decision. on Wednesday, 25th of June 2025. In relation to the public matters on the agenda, item development application, item 6.1 DA 25/0707, demolition of existing structures and construction of centre-based childcare facility at 146 Old South Road, Bowral. The panel determines development application 25/0707 for the demolition of existing structures and construction of a centre-based childcare facility by way of refusal for the reasons specified in the officer's report. Voting was unanimous, 4-0. Item 6.2, DA 24/0710. The panel determines that development application 24/0710 at 71 to 77 Hoddle Street, Robertson, lot 34, DP 1026908, for alterations and additions to existing buildings and woodworking premises by way of approval. For clarity, the panel affirms that the consent is not granted for any fit-out or other use than the proposed woodworking facility. Future use of each tenancy shall be the subject of a separate development application. The panel refers its determination to council staff for the preparation of suitable conditions of consent for the development as described above. The conditions shall have regard to the panel's reasons for refusal, reasons for approval, I beg your pardon. The panel's reasons for both the voting was unanimous, 4-0. The panel's reasons for these determinations are set out in detail in the minutes to be published on the council's website within the next 2 business days. I'd like to thank my fellow panel members for their assistance today, and I declare the meeting closed at 3:12 p.m.